Hi, I'm Mason Chaudhry, CTO at Excion Solutions, and I appreciate you joining us again for another exciting conversation around agility, value, and transformation. I'm happy to be joined again today by Reed Lowry, the Agile domain expert. We have brought you a topic around value previously, and today we're going to take that next step and talk about not only transformation, but keys to success in optimizing and finding maturity and some of the roadblocks or pitfalls that you should avoid. So Reed, I want to thank you again for joining us. You ready to get started?
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, fantastic. So in our last conversation, we asked what is value, and we focused on how value differs not only in every organization, but within your organization, you should be tailoring what value looks like and what outcomes are. Today, we're going to talk about how do you optimize that agile transformation that you have spent money on. A lot of organizations have trained up their people, spent money on boot camps, on agile coaches. They've bought thought processes from boutique firms. And at the end of the day, they're trying to figure out, are we faster? Are we planned correctly? Is the outcome actually achieving value? So in that, Reed, I want to first start in talking about why an organization should have a roadmap towards its maturity, a roadmap towards optimization of its agile transformation. And so in that, a roadmap is used by many organizations to track new projects, new technology adoption. But help us understand why an agile roadmap is required, be it in a product development or an agile transformation.
Absolutely. So, having been in the industry for decades now, road mapping is nothing new, and everybody understands what a product roadmap is. But it's a little different when we start talking about agility. So, the road mapping process in encompasses all of our ceremonies and our planning activities. So, the thing that we want to do is we want to start by encompassing what is that from the very beginning, and that actually predates the things that we're working on today. We go all the way back to the vision for our product, and that generates our high level roadmaps that we start focusing on. And then ultimately, there's checkpoints along these various ceremonies that happen that enable us to broadly communicate to the rest of the organization not only how well we're doing, but where we are in the process.
And so a critical communication tool, at what levels should a roadmap be used? Are we talking from the executive all the way down? Is this a team level activity?
So, great question. And it actually goes all the way from the organization itself. So, the vision, what's the organization's overarching vision for themselves, as well as the vision for their products? And as you go down within those, you start matriculating into the various components that actually build that road mapping process itself. So, it happens at all levels.
All right. And a lot of us who have worked in technology or worked even on the business side of an enterprise have been through a road mapping exercise. We understand some of the basic steps, but help walk us through a road mapping process.
Sure. So the first thing that we look at is above our product for our company, our organization, what is the business's objectives? What are the things that they will measure and indicate, yeah, no, this is exactly what we want to get out of our product. So that's the beginning. So we have to understand that. And this can encompass multiple products, and it can encompass all sorts of indicators that get us there. Once we've done that, we start looking at what the product vision is, and we revisit this on a regular basis. Once you've developed a vision for the product, it's important when you do your quarterly planning, whether it's PI or not, it's important to talk about those things and communicate with your customers on a religious basis. They may change and it's going to start happening. And when you start breaking it down, there's going to be different themes that that product's going to encompass. The big thing that happens then is, what's the most important thing? In agility, we always prioritize the most important thing, the most financially viable. And then once we've done that, we start planning that orchestrates our building. So it's important. Again, agility focuses on highest value, highest priority first. But it's important to get that insight and that input from our stakeholders and our business holders. What is it that's important to you, so that we can actually do the right thing and delight them when we deliver?
And that's the real value out of it, mapping those objectives, getting continuous feedback from your customers, and then building off of it. So with that, I'd love to understand a design process, because a lot of times in road mapping, folks just aggregate requirements, look at timelines, and then throw something against a wall. What
Right.
do you recommend for an agile design process?
Great question. So, the thing that we look at when you look at the overarching, let's say, for example, scaled agile. So, at the portfolio level, whether it's at the program level or whether it's at the team level, every one of these 7 steps actually applies. So, it's important when we're at the portfolio level, what is it we're doing? Why are we doing it? What's that really look like? And the important thing when we get to the 5th step here is prototyping. We call that in Agile the minimum viable product. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll launch a small feature that says, build this little thing that shows cradle to grave what this thing's going to work like, and let's determine if it really provides value. But by doing that, we then can knock any of the bugs out of it and refine our design, so that ultimately when we go and plant multiple teams on it, we have already figured out what it is we need to do, and we don't have to go back and do the rip and replace that we've done historically with many other products.
Reed, what part do you normally see organizations skipping? Because this makes a lot of sense, but folks like to skip to the chase.
So at the portfolio level, there's not a lot of prototyping that happens. And one of the things that we encourage is, if you're going to do a major product, get a small prototype up and running. So in my history, we had this product that we had an idea for. We took 4 weeks, prototyped the actual product that worked. It touched live data and showed the results to the sponsor, which was a senior VP. By doing this, they were able to say, that's exactly what I want. How soon can we get it hooked up? And we blew her away by showing, oh, it's already touching live stuff. Now all we need to do is implement all the other features you want. And it was all pedal to the metal to get it done.
Very good. So now there are some prerequisites, and I asked about what do some organizations skip? These preconditions for agility, these are the steps that set you up for success. Help us walk through them.
Yeah. So one of the things that we struggle with is, there are organizations that say, well, we're different. And having been doing this now for a couple decades, one of the things that I noticed is, no, the only thing that's different is how you spell your company. But everybody's the same. So, first thing you want to do is build a cross functional, dedicated team. Don't have them working on 2, 3, 4 things simultaneously. Have them focused on that one thing, which goes to the next one, which is chartering. Make sure they're focused on that one product. And they may actually be focused on certain features within that product, and that's their goal. So once you've set that up, the team then is encouraged to build those dynamics that we find in agility, which is that cross functional team. Going back to the first statement, dedicated teams. You can't do that unless you limit what they're working on and ensure that they're only working on one, possibly 2 things at a time. If you're blocked on one thing, you can do the second thing, but never take on 4, 5, 6 things simultaneously and expect to get done in any pace. And then lastly, as you start exercising this, spend time mastering and refining those tools that you're studying. And if you don't do that, what ends up happening is you're not sharpening the saw. And it's important to do that. And we'll dig into that a little bit later.
Quick question for you. Reed, you've had the opportunity to work in large enterprises, including Microsoft,
Mhm.
and in public enterprises. You mentioned build a cross-functional team.
Yeah.
You've seen both. What is the value of a cross-functional team rather than siloed teams?
Think of it as if, and let's just look at a cubicle farm. So we have walls where if I'm working on something and then I have to pick it up and hand it over the wall to somebody else, they may have missed something, or I may have left behind something, or not explained something. Whereas if we look at a real agile team, in whether it's the virtual world or in a real world, they're all gathered around a conference table working together. And as I'm finishing things, they're looking over my shoulder as I start to hand it to them. So it's important to have everybody that's there, whether it's my database guy, my middle tier folks, or my testers, so they can see, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, that makes sense. And that's why having the cross-functional team rather than hand off, hand down, which always results in something getting missed. So it's important to have those folks all collaborating together. The power of the team, the synergy is huge, and that's why we do cross-functional teams.
That sounds great. I second that motion. We've seen a lot of success when there aren't walls and people understand what you're driving towards, especially in product.
Awesome.
All right. So a lot of folks that might be listening to us are on their agile journey and they're saying, "Hey, got to figure out where I'm at. Where's my team at? Where are our teams at? Where's our art at? How are we doing as a portfolio? How are we doing as an enterprise?" So we pivot. Let's talk about process improvement. How do you actually look at maturity or optimization as you go along?
So you've got to have that bar. And if you're not measuring regularly, then what ends up happening is things get forgotten, things get missed, things that were huge pains 6 months ago never get addressed because it dropped off the radar. So it's important to have cadence driven assessments of progress from the team. And it's from the team's perspective, not from outside. The team should be the arbiter of what's going on inside. In doing so, one of the things that has to be from the beginning is that concept of no defects ever emerge from the team, and then hold that line. We've got to have perfect quality coming out of the team. And then once we've gotten that, there's all sorts of things that we can adopt to accelerate our throughput, whether it's automation, whether it's peer programming or pair programming. And then ultimately, if we were to in just these three things and made it a mantra every couple of weeks as we complete work, teams that adopt this, that are fully dedicated cross-functional teams, by the end of their first year have accelerated their throughput with zero defects upwards of 3 times, sometimes 4 times by the end of that first year. And it's phenomenal. The hard part is getting everybody to believe in the beginning that it's coming, and then to stick with it so that they can get this benefit as it comes out.
Yep, getting that buy-in. And so let's talk about metrics. Metrics can be made for anything. And what we've seen in agility, especially when folks start adopting the Agile manifesto and looking at Scrum principles, you heard a lot about velocity. Do we have the velocity? Are we achieving our velocity? Velocity to me is a vanity metric. It's not
Yes.
really looking at throughput. So what we'd love to hear next on is give us the difference between vanity metrics and actionable metrics that actually describe and bring you to value.
Velocity is one of my favorites because it's so arbitrary. Every team has a different way of saying, oh, well, this story is a 5 point story. And if somebody, let's say a well meaning manager, says, why can't you do more points compared to so and so's team? Well, that's easy. All I have to do is jack up my story points on all my stories by one level. Ta da! I did what you wanted. So we want to avoid that. So the vanity metrics we want to look at, and it's things that typically they lack substance. In other words, oh, that's nice to know, but now what do you do with it? Right? There's no context, there's no nuance. It's just a number, and it's often very misleading. Again, velocity can be very misleading. Velocity, going back to that real quickly, is an arbiter of what's possible, not what you accomplished. So it's used for planning what's possible and then ultimately measuring, did we do okay against our plan? Vanity metrics ultimately don't help you when it comes to improving your product or your business in any meaningful way. So we want to throw those out. And what we really want to focus on is actionable metrics. So things that make you say, based on that, what can I do with it? So the first question we ask is, if it's an actionable metric, how can I actually use this in making a business decision? That's key. If there's a metric that says, for example, we're throttling our spindles in our RAID storage, well, then the business decision is we need to add more storage. So that's a metric that is actually usable. Um, the important part is you need to be able to intentionally reproduce the same results. Otherwise, the metric is all over the board. So if it can be reproduced, again, going back to just a simple data center example, if I'm throttling my spindles, I can see that religiously and I can see the result. That to me says spend money on more storage, whether it's more faster storage or whether it's broader storage. That's a decision I'll need to make. And then ultimately, is this data true? In other words, are we seeing a slowdown in throughput on the front end of our application because the back end is being throttled? So you can see all these things as cause and effect. And unless they impact making a business decision to do the right things, ultimately it may actually be a vanity metric in disguise. So make sure that whatever those metrics are, they result in making further decisions that improve your business and overall improve your product.
And so actual metrics, you gave a data center example. A lot of times organizations and teams, they're not sure about what they're measuring and why.
Right.
So this really does come to education. You can set some actionable metrics, but if your teams aren't bought in, managers aren't bought in, then you're collecting information that might not lead to anything. So walk us through what the value is in not only educating and training on the bottom floor, but all the way to the top.
So down at the team level, it's obvious, right? Tooling, education, how do I use Docker? How do I use this new automation tool? Those things make sense. But some of the other business decisions as we move up the decision chain, it's important that we understand how are they utilizing Docker, for example, in deploying these things? How are they utilizing the automation in deploying these things? And if we're not getting all of the information we need, what is it we need to do to expand on that? So as we look at training, it's important that we focus not only on the teams, but on the program and the executive level. It Everybody needs to be hearing the same thing, reading the same thing, and studying the same thing. One of the biggest flaws in agile adoptions is assuming, oh, that's something IT does. That's something a team does. The reality is, agile is something an organization is. That includes HR, that includes marketing. Everybody needs to be walking the talk. Now, they may not all be using Docker, but they need to understand the terms so that when somebody says, yeah, we're going to introduce this, how do we market that? How do we show people that's a competitive advantage? And if we don't have people hearing and seeing the same things, ultimately it's a huge disconnect. That one of the things you and I have talked about in the past is our company can be focused on a various product set, and we have an IT department. What I like to encourage is IT shouldn't be an afterthought. IT should be something we do, and the product is an output, a result. So it's important that we have those products, but we're an IT organization overall, and we have these products that we offer as a result. So getting everybody up to speed on the same level of knowledge, whether or not you're using it in your day-to-day work, that's not necessarily the point. The point is understanding here's what we're doing down in the trenches. How can you support that? And by understanding what it is, everybody is doing the same thing. And that makes an organization absolutely dangerous to their competitors.
And that is the core idea behind business agility. And what I take away is that common knowledge of what one side is doing. It's not, hey, IT should only understand what Docker is or containers are, but if it helps improve your speed and the nimbleness of your IT investments, then everyone should have some sort of knowledge in what it is. So I totally agree with that.
Absolutely.
So here's a little bit of a pivot. In our final conversation in this series, we're going to focus on organizations that are in flight. They have taken steps towards value. They are not only are they road mapping their agility, they're trying to fine tune the metrics, they're trying to gain buy-in. But one of their biggest questions is, how do I know that we as an organization are having success or not? If we're moving at the rate that we want to, what does it actually look to in real time to figure out if we, first of all, have the right success criteria, and second of all, if we're getting somewhere? So Reed, just a couple of final thoughts from you on our next topic around success criteria.
Yeah. So there's a lot of organizations that spend literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in transformations. And the overarching question is, how do I know I got it right? There's been a lot of promises that, oh, you're going to have, better quality, better throughput, better, faster time to market. All of these things are valid and true only if you stick with the foundations. So it's important to understand the criteria for success is gated on an if and then statement. If you do the basics and you stick with them, and then you capitalize on learning from them over time, then indeed you will see the success criteria that we can talk about.
That sounds great. So we look forward to speaking on success criteria, getting that train to sustain going in your organizations. We hope you'll join us for that. And thank you, Reed, for walking us through Agile road mapping. I hope our listeners got some value from spending time with us today. Thank you again.
Thank you.